Welcome to the Sourcing Industry Landscape Podcast, powered by SIG.org and hosted by Dawn Tura.
Well, folks, welcome back to the podcast. My name is Dawn Tura, and I'm so excited about who I've got in the studio today. So let me introduce you first to Enrico Aresu. He's the Director of Compliance and Financial Crime Industry Practice Lead at Moodys Analytics. Prior to joining Moodys, he spent 15 years in the compliance and risk field, most of which in the consulting industry, where he advised major organizations in their technology-driven compliance journeys. He focuses on the development and implementation of new technologies to build an enterprise-wide approach to risk management. Now, Enrico also holds an MBA, a master's in engineering, and a master's in renewable energies from the Polytechnic University of Milan. So, Enrico, welcome.
Thank you very much for having me, Dawn, and it's really a pleasure to be here.
So excited to talk to you in a minute. And with him is Gary Storr, who's Trust Your Supplier General Manager. Now, Gary has over 30 years of corporate experience at all levels of IT and has held senior executive IT roles with responsibility that includes technology, enterprise solution delivery, corporate infrastructure operations, global application development, professional services integration, and global business strategy. Now, prior to joining Chinyard, which is the parent company to Trust Your Supplier, Gary served as the Chief Information Officer for Nortel Networks. So, Gary, welcome to the podcast.
Well, Dawn, thanks for that welcome. And this is going to be awesome. I can't wait to get started. Thanks.
Me too. But before we get started, let's take a quick break for a word from our sponsor. And when we return, we're going to hear from our two wonderful guests.
Sourcing Industry Group, or SIG, is the premier global sourcing association and is widely known as a forum for providing thought leadership, networking, and training opportunities. Another central element of SIG is training. SIG is the parent organization for SIG University, which was founded on the ideals of elevating sourcing and risk professionals to deliver strategic value to their organizations and transform their careers. It was created at the request of SIG members who saw an educational training gap for today's workforce and offers one-of-a-kind certification and training programs for professionals seeking deep expertise in sourcing, governance, risk, intelligent automation, and more for themselves and for their teams. We perfected e-learning for adults before it was necessary. Our proven model for adult learners provides a flexible environment with online lessons, quizzes, and discussion forums moderated by expert faculty. Programs are offered in several different delivery models depending on you or your organization's need. Open cohort semesters start on average every 1.5 months, while closed cohorts for teams of 20 or more can start at any time. In addition, we also have self-paced or fast-track options. You can learn more about all of these offerings on the SIG website or by reaching out to one of our representatives. So make sure to take advantage of all that SIG has to offer for both members and non-members alike, because there really is something for everyone.
Well, welcome back to the podcast. So I'm really excited to talk to you two gentlemen about the evolution of Trust Your Supplier, why we've evolved from an onboarding platform to a full ecosystem of risk and compliance data and tools. So Gary, could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure, Dawn. The evolution is really from just simply an onboarding platform was made clear to us, I think, over the last couple of years with all of the events that have happened in the world that have affected our personal lives, our businesses, our relationships with partners. And we were just recognized that risk and compliance was just so important to our customers, whether it was the pandemic, whether it was geopolitical issues, social issues, supply chain shortages, the climate. These things are just on the very top of the mind of organizations as they start to look forward into how they're forging partnerships with their suppliers and their vendors. And so it was just kind of an obvious evolution for us to take the platform we built and incorporate the component of risk. And if we were going to do that, we really wanted to do that with organizations to provide it credibility around that risk. And that's why Moodys is just at the centerpiece of that migration and that evolution on our platform.
Yeah, I mean, you're not kidding. We have had so many Black Swan events since the pandemic even started. And you're right, between social justice, barges getting stuck, cargo ships getting stuck to, issues with truckers and railways and shipping yards to, now we've got climate issues and weather related and geopolitical. So it's huge. So in your ecosystem platform, you partnered with risk intelligent data providers such as Moodys. So tell me, what does Moodys bring to the table?
Well, in short, everything. Moodys is kind of a one-stop shop, if you will, but it's more than that, really. It's credible information that tells you about who your suppliers are. Are they reputable? Are they going to introduce risk to your organization? What is their experience in certain aspects of achieving compliance measures in worldwide as compliance is becoming more and more of an issue, and they really give you a full, we like to refer to as a 360 view of how that supplier is performing and the relative risk that supplier might bring to you as a procurement organization, as you're either partnering with that organization currently, or you're maybe looking for a brand new supplier and you want to understand what that supplier is all about. So we had an opportunity to have this relationship with Moodys, and we looked at the vast array of components that they delivered, whether it be centered around financial health or sanctions or ESG, all of the buzzwords that we all talk about. Well, Moodys had practically everything that we thought we needed, and there is no more reputable firm in the world around those areas. So it was just it was a natural for us, and we were just so happy that we're able to forge this partnership.
That's awesome. So Enrico, why has Moodys diversified your compliance in so many areas? Can you share a little bit about the evolution of your platform?
Sure. So, the point is that compliance is not anymore just a number of regulatory requirements or internal rules to fulfill applying a sort of a risk-based approach. So its role is evolving and should also guide the companies to have a more robust, resilient, and sustainable supply chain and eventually business model. So for companies, especially taking into account what also Gary explained in the last seconds, is becoming very, very important to address these three questions. So first of all, who I'm doing business with, first point. Second point, what risk I'm facing doing that? And then how do I holistically address this risk at scale? And this is especially relevant if we look at tier one organizations with a global supply chain footprint. And to achieve it, so companies need really what Gary already mentioned, this is a 360-degree risk view. And this is the main reason why Moodys is not only diversifying its compliance offering in so many areas, from know your supplier to ESG to sanction screening, for example, but also and moreover, building a comprehensive, thorough, and seamless value propositions. So compliance is really a journey, So for our clients and for us, and that's why we work on our offering really day in, day out, with passion to allow our clients to pioneer their compliance challenges. And we really know that now, looking at supply chains, there are a lot of those. So it's
So can you tell me, Enrico, how are enterprises really dealing with geopolitical, regulatory, industry risk? Are they taking notice of it? Just tell me a little bit how they're coping.
Yeah, the landscape is becoming very complex. Now, in the last couple of years, with Corona, then since February with the conflict in Ukraine, now a potential challenging global economic situation. So many companies struggle to effectively cope with all these diverse and sometimes, I would say, conflicting aspects. So they understand that the right approach is to look at these risks with an holistic approach. Understand understanding their interconnections and eventually their impacts on the supply chain is a key element. The problem is how. Because we know that many companies have a very fragmented data and IT landscape, and departments work in silos sometimes, so like sales, procurement, compliance, and so on. But what we see in the market is that things are changing. And organizations are working to bridge those gaps. So an interesting example is that we see in the last 6-7 months is around the sanctions compliance. Now, our regulatory triggered the process that heavily impacts the supply chain operations. So we know that since the beginning of the Ukrainian conflict, the regulatory scrutiny around sanctions increased, and aspects like the 50% rule or comprehensive sanction from OFAC are becoming like a standard for many organizations. No? And in the end, sanction compliance means not only screening a name against a sanction list, is really an holistic exercise where data management, ownership due diligence, risk-based approach around a supply chain play a very important role. And we see that organizations are more mature in this regard. So this is just maybe a small example how organizations are enhancing their compliance process around supply chain due diligence, but I think is a good example because we see a lot of improvements in this regard.
Yeah, and procurement is being held responsible for introducing and not mitigating third-party risk, including human rights. So can you share how you're looking at human rights in the supply chain, Enrico?
Yeah, thanks for this question, because I'm based out of Frankfurt in Germany, and the new law in Germany, the German Supply Chain Act, coming into force next year, so in a couple of months, is really, I would say, paving the way for a new kind of approach regarding human rights and also environmental risk, another very important component from an ESG perspective. And the point is that to effectively comply with the law, organizations should go beyond the single risk component or requirement from a legal perspective, and implement a very robust framework where risk appetite and risk-based approach must be clearly expressed. And again, we come back to the initial point, so this 360-degree risk view. And in order to consistently measure human rights along their supply chain, the annual risk analysis piece should clearly guide the company's strategic decisions. For example, in terms of the measures that they deploy to face those risks, like due diligence. So defining the appropriate level of due diligence is essential to take the right decision. But in this regard, it's also very important the trade-off between effectiveness and efficiency. So it means, so are we looking at all the relevant risk according to our risk appetite? This is the effectiveness piece, and then the efficiency piece. But what are we doing to remove the unnecessary noise? So, there are a lot of, for example, false positives or insights that are not really relevant with a specific risk appetite. And the law in Germany, in this regard, is more a duty of care than a duty of success. But nevertheless, it's essential for companies to be able to clearly explain the rationale behind their decisions. So what they are, why they are onboarding specific suppliers. So especially if it should turn out that they have some human rights shortcomings. So what I see is that Moodys clients, our clients, are really taking this seriously, not only because of reputational risk or legal risk that obviously are present, but also moreover because they understand how important this is for our society as a whole.
Yeah, and so you mentioned the German law, but we've got regulations coming out in a lot of countries. So does Moodys cover all the regulations and make sure that we're complying to all of them?
Yeah, I would say yes, also because Moodys is we have a global presence, so it's absolutely important. But the point is also, one of the most relevant aspects in this regard is also the kind of I would say the kind of, would say also the kind of linkage between regulations now, because so I just mentioned the German Supply Chain Act. No, it's very interesting, but we have other regulations in France, in Norway, in California, in Australia. I mean, there are a lot of those. The point is really the kind of a framework that the companies should implement to be compliant. Now, as I said, it's not just a tick box approach; it's something much more complex, and especially when you look at your supply chain, we see that this is also bringing new elements. So, for example, so for many years, companies look at, for example, the aspects like just in time. Now, when it comes to their supply chain, now it's a bit becoming more just in case, for example. No, and this is because we are bringing to this kind of overview, this also the risk-based approach, the risk element, no? And when you look at your supply chain, it's not only the economic efficiency that is very important for you, but there is also this ESG aspect. You know, you have to look at human rights, employment rights. So it's a very small example, and this is just to better understand how these aspects should also guide, due diligence in a supply chain. If a very important portion of your, I don't know, tier 1 suppliers is located in a country where maybe the human rights have a poorer record, for example, obviously you cannot compare the due diligence exercise that you should run if your suppliers, for example, are located in Japan, for instance, where obviously human rights are much more better. So I mean, this is the point, and we see this evolution, and we are pretty much sure that this kind of evolution is going to stay in the market. It's not something that in a couple of months, years, and so on will be done. So and it's very important that the companies understand that and proactively approach these topics. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm talking, Gary, if I'm using your tool, risk and compliance vary every day, day by day. And so how is Trust Your Supplier approaching risk and compliance on a day-to-day basis?
Well, Enrico made an outstanding point, right? This is not going away. In fact, it's evolving, and it's evolving very rapidly, and it's evolving at different paces in different places. So what we try to do with our platform is accommodate that change. And we know that there's, we're never done, right? This is going to continue to change. The sands are going to continue to shift. So our job is to keep, up with that landscape. So when Germany is introducing the Supply Chain Due Diligence Act, we need to be on top of that so we can offer our customers the opportunity to understand, first of all, understand it, and then be able to collaborate with their supplier base around that in an effective way, so they can consume the information from the suppliers and ultimately be compliant. And even above compliant, right? It's really about, in many cases, these things are about, doing the right thing, right? Or, right? And when we boil it down, so that's our job. We view, we need to stay on top of what's happening, which is extremely challenging. It's a big world. Not obviously, not everyone sees the world the same way, as we all know. So we're constantly trying to evaluate what the right thing to do is and what the appropriate direction is. And I think working with people like Enrico really helps with that, because that way we can take an expert's opinion into consideration, and that helps drive the direction that we want to go. Obviously, when you're delivering a service like the Trust Your Supplier platform, you have a finite amount of resources. So it's very important for us to effectively devote those resources in the right direction. So working with Moodys and Enrico and others like him in the industry, and just frankly staying on top of things, lets us do that.
So that brings me to my next question. Do you recommend only going to one compliance and risk partner such as Moodys, or do you go to numerous sources at Trust Your Supplier?
Well, that's a good question. It's a bit like your grocery store, right? We all have one grocery store that we go to where we probably do 99% of our shopping, right? But when you need maybe a particular cut of meat or an exotic spice, you might go to a specialty shop, right? And so I think that this is a bit like that, right? So Moodys is our centerpiece, and then we're going to go to other providers where they might have something esoteric that brings value, right? And that's going to continue to change, right? We know that the provider today may not be the provider tomorrow, and the risk today may not be the risk tomorrow. And so as we see this evolution again, we just want to, we want to stay on top of things. Our relationship with Moodys allows us to really, leverage an organization that has its, finger on the pulse of what's happening in the risk space worldwide. But we have to acknowledge that, there's no organization that can cover absolutely every base all the time. And so we're always having an eye out for, okay, where are those other areas, where we might need to have another opportunity for one of our customers to look at risk in maybe a different way.
So if I came to you as a customer and I said, these are the risks that we're worried about, you have other tools that you can bring into your platform.
Yeah, and sometimes the provider is the supplier itself, right? So there's information that you just can't get anywhere else but from the supplier. If you need to know their particular policy, well, the only way you're going to get that is to ask the supplier. And we have tools and we have capability to do that. If you came to us and you said, look, I want to, so organizations come to us that are very mature, and specifically, these are the 15 risk items that are important to me. We say, okay, and then we'll sit down with somebody like Enrico or Moodys or whoever, and we'll shape that. We'll shape an offering. Other organizations are maybe less mature, less, have gone, less, their journey's only just begun around risk. And so then we can make recommendations. Okay, what should be important to you? How are you looking at ESG? How are you looking at sanctions? What's predictive and prescriptive that you really need to understand that's going to be central to the kind of business you're in? And then, we can work together with our partners like Enrico and others to kind of formulate that recommendation. So it's there's no one size fits all here. We wish there were, because that would be a lot easier.
A lot easier.
But
yes.
It's certainly, I don't want to say it's custom, but there's certainly a little bit of looking at things from the standpoint of the customer and then doing the right thing for them.
Yeah. So Enrico, then I'm curious, is there anything that you would recommend to somebody in an organization today that we might not be aware of? Are there transactional laws, data privacy, anything else on the forefront? Do you warn us when they're coming? Because obviously you're global and you're looking at everybody's regulations. So what else should we be aware of? Because this is a scary topic.
Yeah, thanks for asking this question. No, I would say maybe repeating a bit myself in this regard, but beyond the single new requirements, what we see in the market is that, for example, regulators, law enforcement authorities now are becoming more careful of how companies implement, for example, these ESG aspects in their operations, in the supply chain due diligence and so on, especially really from effectiveness perspective. No, so it's very important that the companies go beyond what I call now this tick box approach. Mm-hmm. As I said, no, these regulations are here to stay. So hence organizations should really understand how to embed those in their operations in order to guide their business decisions, eventually enhancing sustainability and profitability of their supply chain operations. No? And with this in mind, deploy a robust, transparent, and flexible approach to comply with the current and new requirements is like a paramount pillar, no? Because there is more to come in the next months and years. And for example, when we work with organizations that have a global footprint, for such organizations, it's really very important to have the right trade-off between robust global standards. Okay, it is very important, obviously, and then a kind of I would say local uplifts. No, so really take into consideration regulatory aspects that are very important in a specific country, but maybe not for the entire supply chain or for the entire company. And to do that, you have to have the right data, obviously. You have to have the right also the right solution. For example, what also Trust Your Supplier now bring to the market, in my opinion, is very interesting because give you this kind of flexibility, how you can, for example, blend and marry internal data, external data, for example, our data, no, and giving clients, buyers, and so on this kind of a view. And this is something that is incredibly important, especially because looking at these new requirements, no, that where the ESG component is so important. Actually, there aren't so many companies worldwide that they disclose ESG data. So we are speaking really about few companies worldwide, no? So it's very important that so buyers are able to deploy solutions like a trusted supplier, and I would say also in combination with our data value proposition, to have all these insights to be not only compliant now, that is a point, but also, I mean, trying to be proactive, because there is more in the horizon in the next future. So it's a very important aspect, in my opinion. Yeah.
Yeah, and you're so right. We're not going to roll back any of the regulations. We're only going to get more and more. So Gary, are you constantly looking at the market and saying what else should we measure? What else is coming down the pike for your clients?
Yeah, well, we do. Certainly we do. And, it's a partnership. And so, with our platform, right, there's obviously, we operate the network, so we're always looking. We're working with people like Enrico. They're always looking at what the change are. And obviously they're the experts, right? Enrico's the expert. So he'll come to us and say, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? And then there's our customers, right? So they are always, they're in the business, they're living this, right? And they know what they're being asked to deliver. We know, as and talk to any CPO of any large enterprise now, they have things on their objectives they've never seen before, right? Yeah. Now they're being tasked with delivering, scope 2. Well, they didn't, 2 years ago, they didn't know what scope 2 was, right? So there's just such a fast evolution around here. So all these different, perspectives are coming into play. So, yes, we try to look at it. We're not necessarily risk experts like Enrico is. So the risk experts help us, but then our customers, they really kind of define, what's important to them. And after all, we are here to serve the customer, right? So, we try to give them guidance, and then we try to take input from them so that we're doing the best thing to help them succeed and achieve their objectives. And if their objectives change, then we'll alter and fine tune what we're delivering to them so they're getting the most value out of the solution.
Yeah. So are you going to be giving any tours of your platform?
We'd be glad to give a tour. We're really excited about that. So we'd be, if anyone's listening to this, just reach out, and we'd be glad to give you the nickel tour anytime you need it.
Well, I love that idea, because I think once you get into the platform itself, it's so much more self-explanatory as to what you're helping guide people through. So, sure. So thank you for offering that out. So unfortunately, gentlemen, we are out of time today. So everyone else, I know there's a lot of questions we'd love to ask these two wonderful gentlemen, but we're going to have to hold it for next time. So can I invite you to that for a follow-on?
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Love to come back.
Enrico, how about you?
Absolutely.
Good.
Absolutely.
Well,
very keen on that.
Yeah, this has been fascinating. And this is a story that's only going to get more and more complex and scarier as we go. So I would love to invite you back and just get chapter 2 of risk and compliance.
Awesome. Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you very much. Bye.
So thank you. That's Gary Storr, who's the general manager of Trust Your Supplier, and Enrico Aresu from Moodys, and he is our compliance expert. So thank you both, gentlemen, and have a wonderful day. Folks, tune into the podcast for a follow-on next chapter of this story, and hopefully you'll be listening to it very soon. Take care.
Thank you for listening. Subscribe to the Sourcing Industry Landscape podcast through iTunes or your favorite podcast app. Want to nominate yourself or someone else for an interview? Email us at podcast@sig.org.